Good evening. Microphone here. My name is Jeff Smith. I'm Vice Chair of the Webster Groves Plan Commission. We are a 9-member board of citizens appointed by the City Council to review development proposals and make recommendations to the City Council regarding future development of the city. In addition to the members of the Plan Commission participating in person and via teleconference, we have a few other representatives of the city I would like to introduce. Councilmember Bliss.
Oh, she was going to be online if she was available.
Okay. Acting City Attorney Peter Bruntrager, Planning and Development Director Mara Perry, and Planner Barbara Stovall. Chance to meet you yet. Welcome. I would like to welcome you all to tonight's monthly meeting of the Commission and take this opportunity to explain how we operate. As indicated in our agenda, we will begin with the regular session of the meeting when we will hear new applications for rezoning or subdivisions. We will hear a staff report and the applicant will explain their proposal. We will then ask for comments from the public. At that time, anyone with an interest in the proposal may indicate to city staff they have a question or would like to express their opinion. To make sure that we accurately record your name, we ask that you fill out a speaker's card if you are in person and turn it in to Mrs. Perry. For those on Zoom, please click on the raise hand feature on Zoom. To make sure that we accurately record your name, we ask that you identify your full name and address at the beginning of your comment, either in person or on Zoom. When you make your comments, we ask that you be as concise as possible and not repeat a point made by a previous speaker. We also ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. One person who is a spokesperson for an organization may have 6 minutes to comment. After all citizens have spoken, the applicant will be asked to respond to any questions that have been raised during the hearing. When we have finished reviewing one proposal, we will move on to the next application. Comments concerning items not on the agenda should be made during the public comment section of the agenda near the beginning of the meeting. When we have completed the regular portion of the agenda, we will go into executive session. At that time, the commission will discuss the proposal and may decide to vote on the application or to postpone the decision. You are welcome to remain and listen to the discussion, but there will be no additional opportunity for public comment at that time. Our recommendations are sent to the City Council. In most cases, the City Council will conduct a similar hearing and must enact an ordinance before the proposal is finally approved. If the Plan Commission takes a vote tonight, the City Council will likely take up this issue at its first meeting next month. If you want information regarding our vote or the progress of the application, you may contact staff at City Hall. I would ask that the secretary read the first item for tonight's regular meeting,
which is election of new officers.
So
Per our bylaws, we need to take nominations for the following. We need chair, vice chair, designated vice chair, and secretary. If anyone has any questions about any of those roles, please let me know. You do not need a second. Anyone can nominate any of our members. Just as a reminder, if you see up there, we have 8 of our 9 members here this evening.
Mara, so the chair would be what Jeff is doing right now.
Correct.
The vice chair is what he used to do.
Correct. So he would, if the chairperson is unable to attend, the
Okay.
vice chair is able to attend in their place.
Okay.
And then again, if there's a combination of the two, it's in the bylaws
Okay.
that I sent out.
Okay.
And then the secretary reads does not take minutes. We have a staff member who takes
Right.
minutes.
That's what I was. Yeah.
The secretary reads aloud the items as they come up on the agenda.
Okay. And then designated vice chair is like if they're the person's gone.
Sorry, what?
Who's
We have a vice chair before?
Jeff was the
I'm
vice chair.
or the designated vice chair?
We didn't
did
have a
not
designated-
have
I
it.
didn't
Okay.
have
We
a-
did not have a,
No, I
no.
think we've been going to have a secretary for
I knew he was.
a year or two.
Okay.
That's where I was confused reading this bylaws you said. I didn't really
We-
see the secretary in there, and I thought in the past, Jeff and Charles did all the reading.
No, there was usually someone, Tony would usually read as the secretary.
Right.
Tony would
Yeah.
usually read as the secretary.
Tony read as secretary.
Yeah. Sometimes I did if she wasn't there.
Yeah.
So, okay, she read as a secretary, but she wasn't a secretary?
So we were
Yeah.
supposed to do an election just as everything shut down. So with everything, after everything shut down and changing over to Zoom, we just never took the time to do a formal election.
Yeah, but she did volunteer at one of the meetings prior to that she would be the secretary.
Correct.
So,
She had volunteered prior to that. We hadn't done a formal election.
But yeah.
So if I followed you right, before Zoom, there wasn't a secretary So after Zoom, she started acting like it, but it was no more
No, she was
formalized.
secretary before Zoom.
So
There was
the-
a secretary.
There was, over time, we have had a secretary. We have always had someone as the secretary.
Right.
Whether we have done super formal elections, we've always had a chair and a vice chair. Those were the two we were focused on. If someone was not there to act as secretary, the vice chair would read.
Mhm.
Okay, so right now we have Jeff as officially vice chair and Tony's acting as secretary.
That is correct.
That is correct.
As of today.
Yes, up to date,
As
today.
of right now, as of later. maybe
But we
different.
do need to do an election, and we're supposed to, per the bylaws, do elections every January.
Okay.
And again, we have not done anything in the last couple of years with Zoom and with everything else that had gotten crazy. We weren't, in a minute, I'm going to go through some of our procedures we weren't completely following just because we were trying to morph this half Zoom, half in person, then all back to all Zoom, then back to all in. We're needing to put in place a better set of procedures to make sure we're following everything we need to be following.
I don't see Tony on the Zoom, do I?
Tony was unavailable to come this evening. She is not even able to get on a phone or Zoom. She had she had sent some information to me in regards to her votes.
Are you gonna tell us?
So now
Oh,
can I
no.
It's a
nominate-
secret vote.
Oh, I thought we were all just saying it. Okay.
No,
Okay.
no, that's why you have a ballot.
Can I nominate somebody now?
Yes,
Do we have
please.
to nominate it or?
Yes, we need
First.
people to nominate and there's no need for a second.
Okay. So for chair, I would nominate Jeff.
I second that nomination.
Yeah, third.
Joe is
So that's why I
fourth.
don't understand the ballot.
Well,
Well, because we still have to do it. It's-
yeah,
Okay.
Annie?
yeah, and you don't need a second, but thank you.
Got it.
Thank you
Okay,
for your support.
this is funny.
So.
Okay.
I-
So,
That's
No,
the
I think we
nomination.
need to first get our entire
Right.
slate
right.
of everyone who
Right.
wants to, yes.
So,
So,
so I've been nominated. I'll nominate Tony, not because I don't want to do the job, but so she can be considered.
Tony was asked to be considered.
Okay.
As chair.
can I also nominate Tony to be vice chair?
I
I
don't
mean,
know. I'm
does
very
somebody have to be
confused.
nominated in order for the vote on it?
I think you did.
I don't know.
Yeah, except I did it in such. Sorry,
Secretary.
we're trying to figure out our procedures because again, we haven't done it this way before and the bylaws were set up that it has to be a secret vote.
Right. I know.
But the hard part is if we vote on each, we have to also get all of our other members on Zoom have to be able to send me something via like a private message. And so I'm still trying to figure out how we're trying to figure out how we're going to do this.
Got it.
Oh, Mara, this is Maddie. I'm on Zoom. Is it just me and Christopher that are not there in person?
Oh, and then sorry,
Scott.
Christopher's telling me there are only two options for the chat, all panelists and attendees, so they can't actually send me a message.
Okay, we could email you.
Yes, you can.
Okay, we'll do that.
Yes, you can email to me. I can check it on my phone.
So the question is do we do
Well,
one at a time?
yeah, let's do that.
Are we gonna do? you know,
Let-
who's
let's
gonna be
do-
Chairman and then we go on.
And then vote. We can't vote for folks because
Well,
we've got to
she
turn
vote-
these,
he put
we've
her
got to
all
turn
on one
these slips
piece of
in all at
paper.
once. So we're going to have to get all the nominees.
We can put our name on it and get it back to us.
And it's-
Why don't you,
But you're not gonna know somebody's unavailable.
Right.
we have two nominees for chair.
Do we have any other nominees for chair?
You're not gonna know if somebody's unavailable.
Mara, I have no nominees for chair.
What do you
I'm
think?
sorry, say that again?
I have no nominees for chair.
Okay. That's no
Yeah,
nominees.
that's an affirmative.
So we only have two nominees
All
for
right.
the chair.
We have
Perfect.
yes, we have two nominees for chair.
Okay.
All right.
So now do you want us to
Let-
vote on that one or are we gonna do the whole slate and then vote?
Give me a piece of paper, pull off the other part and give me who you would like to vote for chair.
Got it.
All right.
And then the other ones have to email you that. Right?
Yes, they're going to email to me. So Scott and Christopher and Maddie, please email to me. Here, put it in
Okay.
this
I'll
cup,
pass it
please.
down.
I got a red pen. So that's going to stick in.
That way we'll know you voted.
Mara, I'm so sorry. I don't have your email saved anymore. Is it mara.perry? at Webster.
Get a plan commission thing, just. Because Mara sent it.
Yeah, I'm on my work computer for the Zoom. That's fine. I'll look it up.
Oh, Annie's gonna text you.
Yeah.
Okay, I was just trying to make it as fast as possible.
Sounds so
We're
good.
past that, but thank you.
Do we need to write our name?
Yeah, put them in there and then.
Okay, I
pass
just
back.
texted her.
Okay, put it in the cup. Got it.
Do we get both? Okay,
Yeah, exactly.
all right. So everyone's voted.
Let's hope this
here?
is not practice for tomorrow.
Yeah. That will be very painful.
Okay, so Scott and Christopher, are you emailing me?
Yes, I just submitted.
I just texted Maddie.
Okay, I sent it. Thank you.
Thank you, Maddie. Scott, do I have a vote from you?
Yeah, well, it's blazing new trails.
Oh, I see it. Thank you.
Yeah, I just sent it.
Okay. All right, so Jeff, chairperson. Okay, now, would you guys please,
Okay, so he's chair.
Jeff is chairperson.
Jeff is chairperson.
Okay.
So now, could you all
Meeting
please,
adjourned.
Now we're doing a nominee for vice chair.
for vice chair?
And that I will nominate Tony.
Do we have any other
Any other
nominees for vice chair?
I have none.
Maddie?
Wait.
No nominees.
I got lost a little bit. We voted for chair, now we're voting for vice chair.
Now you're voting
Vice
for
chair.
vice chair.
Yes, sir.
And as the nominees, the only nominees, Tony.
Yes.
Right now,
It would appear, yeah. But we should still.
I don't
vote.
think we need
should-
to vote if the only nominee is Tony.
Well,
Okay.
she's got to get one vote.
Okay. I did technically already get a vote where someone told me who they wanted for vice chair and it was Tony. So I do technically already have a vote.
All right, well,
Okay, so
No
I need
objections.
a designated vice chair and I need a secretary.
And what does the
We don't need to
designated
vote.
vice chair do
There's
again?
Only one nominee.
I'll take-
Okay,
Just, I have,
I'll nominate Steve.
there you go.
Will you accept?
No, I don't want,
Okay. And then I got nothing.
I don't want other people.
Mara, I'll nominate myself for secretary.
I'm sorry, what was that, Christopher?
I'll nominate myself for secretary.
Okay,
Christopher,
I'll do designated vice chair. I'll nominate myself for
I'll
designated vice
nominate you,
chair.
Annie, for
Okay,
vice-
perfect.
designated vice chair.
Thank you for your nomination.
You're welcome. See if you can-
All right. Do we
If
have
we-
any, do we have any other nominees for designated vice chair? Thank
No.
Exciting.
You want me to write Annie down on a sheet, give it to you, or you okay with
I think I'm okay.
you. All right.
Okay,
Yes, I know.
so
It's
I
very hard.
have Jeff as our new chairperson, Tony as our vice chair, Annie as our designated vice chair, and Christopher as our secretary.
But we gotta
Did,
vote on
yeah,
it.
did we have any other nominees for secretary?
Anybody
All right.
still interested?
Anybody in the audience? All right.
Okay,
Okay,
All right, we'll accept that without a,
yes.
all right,
great.
great.
Book it.
All right, congratulations to everyone.
Good job.
And we will,
I'm sorry, where'd we end up on secretary?
Secretary is Christopher.
Christopher.
Okay. And you will help us remember to vote again
Next
in,
January. we'll do
January?
this again.
Correct.
Okay.
I will remember.
and we'll,
Sounds great.
very
I'll
good.
put it on the agenda and we will have a better means of our secret ballot.
Right,
That's all right.
okay.
All right. Very good.
So if the
Next-
secretary can read the next
Next
item
item.
on the agenda.
We can do that right now.
Give me 1 second. Sorry, folks, I'll be at the next one. I had the kids at home tonight. Pulling it up.
It's up on the screen, so it's approval of minutes.
Yep, approval of minutes, March 7th, 2022.
All right.
Move to approve.
Do we have any
Second.
discussion?
Oh, I will note, the minutes were changed to say that Neil was in attendance instead of Peter, so we do need to fix that.
Okay.
So every reference to Neil does need to be referenced as Peter.
Okay, do we need a motion to do that?
Whoever makes the motion on the,
Approval?
yes.
All right, so we have a comment from staff to change the attorney to Neil.
No,
Yep.
to
From Neil
Peter.
to
From
Peter.
Neil to Peter. Sorry, Peter. Do we have any additional discussion? All right, can I have a motion again?
Motion to approve as amended.
I'll take yours as a second, Annie.
Yes, second.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
One.
1, 2, I was not here either.
So actually 3.
3, does that give us a?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes. You're good.
right.
Minutes are approved.
Minutes are approved. All right, next
Look up.
item on the agenda.
Public comment?
All right, this is the portion of the meeting where we invite members of the public to comment on items not on the agenda tonight. Do we have anyone in person or online that wishes to do so? Not on the agenda. Nothing online?
Nope, nothing
All right.
online. And then if you can, before we read the next item, I just want to review both for those online, for those in person, and for all of us. Just a reminder of what the procedures used to be for Plan Commission before we had to go to Zoom. Because I think it was a little confusing at the last meeting where people were talking about the fact that we were responding to comments as if it was something different that we'd never done before. And that actually is incorrect. It's more that when we have larger items that are over multiple meetings and we have so many comments coming in, staff writes down all of those comments and comes back and usually responds in report format or the next meeting when it's an item that has to keep going. When we have, most of our items are usually on and voted on in the same night. When we have something that's on and voted on in the same night, we don't want to make the process drag out any longer since we only meet once a month. So we do normally answer those. So if you look up on the screen, I went ahead and did a reminder of how our procedures work and how we are going to, this was prior to Zoom and hybrid, and how we are going to continue unless the commission feels that there is a need to change it. Typically, there's a presentation by city staff. Then the Plan Commission asks questions of staff regarding the presentation. So at that point, that's when Plan Commission can focus directly to staff. Then there's a presentation by the applicant, and then the Plan Commission can ask questions to the applicant regarding their presentation. Then the public hearing comments, they're limited to 3 minutes for individuals and 6 minutes for organizations. This is not the same as remarks of visitors that we do at the city council, where people come up, they speak, and there's no conversation back again. This is more that everyone who wants to speak gets heard. Once it is complete, if staff has the ability to respond to the public's comment immediately, we would typically have answered at that point. Once everyone has finished speaking, we would try to answer all those questions. Last month, because I was trying to run Zoom, do a presentation, talk to people, I didn't have the ability to really write down questions like we normally would and answer all at the end. So I was kind of answering after each person spoke.
Okay.
So what we typically would do is, if once everything's been heard, everyone's been heard, if staff can respond immediately, we do. And then the applicant is usually given time to rebut any other public comments. And that's how we end our format. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear for those that are online watching, for those that are here in the room, that that is how we really do need to be operating, but it's gotten so odd with the combination of people online and in person that we've been trying to, make sure we address everyone's comments and concerns. So that was just how I wanted to start that out before we got on to our public hearing. Any,
We do usually talk
so, sorry,
about every person. That
make sure to speak into the,
we do usually discuss whatever somebody might bring up before we would vote on it. Because it is, I don't remember a time that we
I think there's a difference between when we went for multiple months for both Douglas Hill, for the educational campus zoning. For some of those, there were so many comments coming in on one night. We did not answer directly after all those comments came in because staff had to just write all these different things down and sometimes have to come back, and it was easier to come back the next meeting. So that's where the confusion, I think, is coming.
And as I understand it, the plan is to continue with an online option indefinitely.
At this
For
point in
these
time,
meetings.
we are going to continue with the online option indefinitely, especially because we are getting people attending Plan Commission that have not attended before.
Mm. Cool.
All right, thank you, Mara. We ready for the next item?
Yes, public hearing 21 PC 11 Euclid Elms. It's an application by Robert Keeney on behalf of Onder Properties LLC to establish a planned environmental unit produced within the A4 7,500 square foot residence district on an approximately 1.09 acre tract of land located at the following addresses: 15 Euclid Avenue, 23 Euclid Avenue, 131 Euclid Avenue, and 133 Euclid Avenue.
So I'm going to start briefly. The focus tonight, which I'm going to explain, is going to be on presentation by the applicant. But just as a reminder from last month, the procedure goes through a series of steps. And one of those steps that we're looking at is we're in the middle of meetings with the Plan Commission. And we're at the public hearing stage. When we get back to, I'd gone through this last month, the public hearing process. And when we worked on this last month, we focused on a presentation by city staff, trying to go through the history of the property, reviewing what the request was, trying to explain what the PEU was, because we haven't had one since the 1980s that has been approved and constructed.
Oh, wow.
And then if there were other additional information requests from the Plan Commission, we wanted to add those in. So that was our focus. We did also start with public comments so that we could get some of the questions and concerns out to both pass on to the applicant and for staff. So that is what we did, and we asked the hearing to be kept open to this month. So this month, our focus is going to be on a presentation by the applicant, with the Plan Commission being able to ask questions of the applicant and the public being able to, again, provide comments. We will allow all the comments to be done in the same format, where we will start with people who are here in person. We will then go to comments of people online. If there is an ability for staff to answer some questions, we will at the end of all of that. And if the applicant wishes to, answer at that time, they can. We are asking this to be kept open yet again. And the focus and the reason for this is the applicant's going to make a presentation. We want to hear again from the public. And then staff is going to re-review and do another analysis based on how, as they are starting to hone in on more information based on the various questions that they have received last month and this month. So I did not do a full review at this point. I was going to do it for next month's Plan Commission meeting. I will briefly just do a reminder. The area highlighted in red is the area that's under consideration. It is currently zoned A4 7,500 square foot residence district. It's surrounded primarily by A4, and then just over to the east slightly across the street is also a B1 multiple family district. And then there were two things that the Plan Commission members had asked about. And in particular, I think Tony was the one who brought it up, and a couple other members also agreed. There was one PEU, our one and only one from the 1980s, that she had asked for some clarification on the intensity of use to try to compare and contrast what was being asked for and what had been approved previously. She'd also asked staff to look at Hawken Condos, because they are, although they are not a PEU, they're a B1. That would give another comparable, because they were townhouses. They're condominiums because that's how they are, the legal land that they own. But they are sold as single family houses in a configuration similar to the PEU. So I wanted to put this up, and it's also in the reports that staff put together. This is Webster Oaks Place. This is the only other PEU that's been approved and constructed. It was a PEU overlay on an A4 zoning. The development was approved for 19 units on 3.8 acres, and they built 18 of the units. The houses ranged in size from 2324 square feet, so 2,324 square feet, up to 2,390. So there wasn't a very wide range between the sizes. It was a mix of types of pairs of single-family attached and some single-family detached homes. For the lot coverage, they didn't have in the old packets from the 80s an actual lot coverage number I could work with, but all of the units were 2-story units. So I took the total square footage of all the units, divided it in half, and made an assumption that about 50% of the square footage of the homes was a footprint. And so what we came up with when you ran all the numbers, similar to the charts that were in last month's Plan Commission packet for the proposal, you'll see it has a lot coverage of 12.79% for this PEU. They tried to move things towards the front of the development and left a lot of buffer green space and trees to be protected in the area around the edges of the property. It had a 0.26 floor area ratio based on an average lot size that I took, or house that I took. And then the minimum land area, when you divide the overall 3.8 acres into by the 18 units, they had approximately 9,205 square feet per unit. That's not the amount that they had or that they own, but that includes the shared land that is part of the overall development. And just as a comparison, in the A4 zoning district, you can have a lot coverage up to 40%. The floor area ratio is a 0.32 if you have a lot less than 10,000 square feet, and the minimum land area is required to be 7,500 square feet. So that was some of the comparisons that were asked of staff to provide. Here's a second comparison, sorry.
So they could go down to the 7,500. So again, just on what we looked at last time on this current proposal, they could get more density or could get more coverage with the existing zoning than they're proposing. So on this case, you've got bigger than the 7,500. Is it like this? They were able to go less on the streets as far as that street cross section or something that let them get more? Or did they even end up with more units than they could have got?
So the number of units is not based just solely on dividing by the 7,500. The number of units is based on removing out streets that are required, as well as looking at what is protected. So they only allowed, after reviewing everything, 18 units based on all the other elements that they were looking at: preserving trees, preserving open space, and providing a density that they felt was something that was acceptable under the planned environment unit. They had created a calculation that only allowed the 1.2 more units than would have been allowed if they'd done a standard subdivision that didn't save the trees. So that number was created out of a series of calculations, which is what we've also done, which is why Euclid Elms can only ask for the 6 units. They can't ask for more units because in a traditional subdivision, they can only get the 5 units. And so they only get the 1.2% more, 120% essentially of the units that they could get in a standard subdivision.
The 1.2 is on what we're currently looking at, or so I guess I'm trying to get a handle on how much density or how many more units they really got on this old one we're talking about, Webster Oaks.
Webster Oaks also got the
1.2.
1.2. Yep, Webster Oaks also got.
Really wasn't a big difference between what they could have got in there anyway, I guess is what I'm getting.
No, there is a pretty big difference of what they could have gotten, because even though you're saying that they had 7,500 square feet, in order to get, you have to go have both 7,500 square feet and you have to have 60 foot of lot frontage. So if you can't get that 60 foot of lot frontage and the 7,500 square feet with a roadway to get back there, you still can't make it work. So you can't just automatically divide it by 7,500 square feet. You have to take into account creating an actual true subdivision. So they created and showed what a true subdivision would be if they met all of those requirements, didn't attach the homes. And that created a number that then they were allowed 120% of.
time you get that lot frontage and get a city standard street in there,
Yeah.
that's what we're trying.
So the other one I was asked to look at was Hawken Condos. So these were a B planned multiple family. It had been rezoned from an A4 and an A3. The development was approved for 44 units on 5.99 acres. The houses are interesting. They range in size from 1,472 square feet up to 2,210 square feet. It appears that the way that they did it is whenever they paired attached units together, they would have one that was about 2,200 attached to one that was about 1,400 or 1,500. So they kind of paired them up for the massing with one larger, one smaller. There's also at the very front of the development, one house that's 2,914 square feet. So it's a mix of units of pairs of single family attached and some single family detached. The floor area ratio is an average. So I took an average of the 1,472 and the 2,210 to come up with a number to help figure out this chart. So first of all, for lot coverage, it's the building footprints, and that's at 22.21% lot coverage. The floor area ratio is a 0.31. That is based on that average house size. I didn't go in and find out exactly how many units were 1,472, how many were 1,500, 2,200. I just did the average of all of those. And then the minimum lot area was 5,930 square feet. So in this case, again, it was a B1, not a PEU. So they didn't use the 120% number. They just simply asked for the planned number, which in the B district gives you a larger lot coverage and gives you larger amount of units and density. So they only had the 5,930 square feet of land area, and it actually in the multifamily goes down even lower than that. So I provided those as some comparisons per requests. And what I was going to do now is turn it over to the applicants to make a presentation unless the Planning Commission had any other questions about those two items.
Thank you for that, Mara.
Thanks. Okay,
All right.
I'm going to. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out these two mice, the mouse on my computer and this mouse here. Okay, so we're going to pull this out and come up here and go to, there we go. Okay, so if you want, the applicant can come up and walk through their presentation. You can scroll whichever you prefer.
You just scroll with the wheel.
Yeah, you can scroll with the wheel.
I'm Bradley Peterson. I'm an architect with Bradley Collins, and I'm representing Bob Keeney and Onder Properties. So we provided you with a handout, and then there's a couple other images we added to it at the end of this. We can look at a couple of other things.
Could you speak up a little bit? I'm a little hard to hear you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And as Mara said, this is an open discussion. We have some ideas we want to present. We have some things that we can do that we don't necessarily want to do. They're not the responsible thing to do. So we want to look at everything that's out there that we can do and get some feedback from the Planning Commission and get some feedback from the residents in the community. That's what we're looking to do. So our first image up here is just an image standing in front of our site, looking west down the street. So to the left and the right, you do see a number of single family homes. There's 2-story homes, single family homes, 1-story homes to the left and right. It's not scrolling.
Do you want to?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I can't. It's not doing. It's not
on
working.
Image.
Wheel.
Yeah, it's not going.
Oh, thank you. Just noticed the screen on that. This is exciting.
There we go.
Now it's going. The second page has our table of contents, which we'll go through. So the number of site plans is what we're going to look at. Mara presented a lot of numbers last time and a lot of technical data explaining how we get from, point A to the end. So that's what we'll look at as we go through to the next images. This is an aerial photograph. The area that we're looking at starts about right here, comes down to about this area and back into this area. There's some wooded areas back over here where the cross is. And then it comes back down to this area back here. I think you said there was what, 1.09 acres there. Okay. So you see a number of single family homes that kind of march down the street here. They're all relatively around the same size. The average from, I think, footprints of, I don't know, 800 to 900 square feet to 1,600 square feet. Most of them are 1 stories, and then there are some 2 stories as you get closer to our lots. And it's the same condition on the other side of the street. Then when you get back here over to North Elm, the street, the houses face to the east. So the backs of those houses would face to our site. This is an image that Mara has shown you a couple of times, and those are the lots that we're talking about. So moving from east to west, you have 15, 23, 131, and 133. And those were all zoned A4. These lots have changed a little bit. This was originally allowed for Bell Avenue to come through here as a throughway, and I think the property was ceded over to this person or purchased to this person at some point. So they had this lot, this larger lot, and then this smaller lot on the other side. So what you see in this image is most of the lots to the west are all relatively the same size, around 150 square foot deep or 150 feet deep, and maybe between 60 and 50 feet wide. So there are various different sizes, but they're relatively the same scale. And then when you get to these lots here, this lot is kind of a continuation of these, but then you have a lot of larger lots here. These that are 196 feet deep. So there's another almost 50 feet back here in the back of these lots, which are also larger than all the other surrounding lots around it.
Can I ask a quick question on that slide? And you may not know, that's fine. This across the street from these 4 properties is that a street there on the bottom left, or is that just, what is that representing?
This
So Maddie,
No, to the left. Yeah.
shape, yeah.
so Maddie, that
Mhm.
is not, the one that was to the immediately across the street is a paper street, which is a street that is owned by just a couple of the property, the lots right through there, and the city does not maintain it. The other one that's that L shape is a piece of right of way, and it is not a street.
Okay, thank you.
The next page. The next page shows how the lots are currently divided. So these 2 were reproportioned, so to speak, to 2 60-foot wide lots to meet the minimum requirements in an A4 neighborhood. The lot farthest to the west is as it was. This one never changed. It's 59.29 wide by 150 deep, so it almost is 7,500 square feet. These 2 ended up being 11,811 square feet, and this one is over 14,000 square feet. So this is nearly twice as big as what would be allowed in an A4 area. Each one of them have a 19.04 feet front yard setback, which is determined by averaging the front of the building on this side and the side of the building that faces the street on this side. Then each one of them then has a 6-yard setback or 6-foot setback. And then each one of them again has a 35-foot rear yard setback.
So this represents an even splitting of that middle lot and what you could, the footprint that you could
Right.
build.
So this is how they're currently divided. This is the current division that they are. So that property line has already been relocated.
I'm sorry?
That property line has already been relocated. So this is the current
Okay.
configuration.
Okay.
This current configuration of lots.
Okay.
So you can see that these are a lot larger lots than there are in the neighborhood. This image shows contour lines and the tree study. So your contour lines start over here, I think at about 530. They go up to around 532. And then back here, they're back to 530. So you kind of have a plateau that kind of sits right here in this area. And this back here begins to gradually slope downward, but then going in this direction, it slopes down a lot more. And then this is the protected tree area with all these black dots here, the ones that are filled in, those are protected trees. There's one outside the boundary over here, and there's two up front that are protected trees also. The ones that are not protected, there's 4 of them that are along this property line, and I think there's one back here, and that's, yeah. So that's the current division of the lots with contours and the tree study. This next image is the current configurations of lots. And what we could do if, I guess by the ordinance, these are the size of the houses that we could build if we chose to do so. So moving from the left to the right is the first one is 2,845 square feet. And this is based on either the 0.32 or the 0.3, depending on the size of the lot. Moving to the next one, it's 3,543 square feet. The next one's stretched out a little bit longer. It's a little more shallower because the other two have detached garages. This has an attached garage on the house, and it butts up to both of these side yard setbacks. So we could go that wide with it and build a house, again, that's 3,543 square feet. The next image over shows that we could build a house there for 4,435 square feet. So this is what we could do if we chose to do so. We just have to go through the architectural review board and get our approvals. The next image shows, I think I lost my cursor. There it is. So the next image shows what we could do again with contours and trees. So in this image, most of these houses, we could line them up along the 19.0 foot 6 front light setback. They'd still kind of relatively, be on this plinth or this plateau, so to speak. We could scoot them back to kind of diminish the amount of gradient that we could do. Most of these trees, all these trees back here would be saved behind the protected area footing. But this area up here, there were 2 trees that we were supposed to save. So we would have to reconfigure this house, put the house somewhere else on the lot, or remove these 2 trees and supplement them with other plantings, which we would be allowed to do, I think. So again, this is what we can do. It's not necessarily what we choose to do. This is the PEU that Mara was talking about. So we have a 2-lane private drive coming in and a cul-de-sac. And we were able to get 5 houses, 5 lots and 5 dwelling units on this property with a, according to the ordinances of the city of Webster Groves. Then the next image shows that with the contours and with the trees. So doing this, it's what we can do and what we're allowed to do. It's nothing we would do, but it would eliminate most of these trees back here. It would require a considerable amount of regrading of the property to be able to do this. So the next image is showing one of the thoughts that we're thinking about, which is attached housing. To the left, you have 2 houses that are attached on the west side of the property. On the east side of the property, there are 2 houses in front that are attached, and then there are 2 houses in the back that are attached. Now, these are all shown, I think, at around 2,500 square feet is what we would be allowed to build. again, we're trying to be respectful of other houses in the neighborhood, the scale of the houses and what they are. So this is what we can do, but it's not necessarily what we would do. We're just showing a presentation of attached housing and how they can be set on the lot. So with this type of a plan, we would have 1, 2, 3 houses in front. This one could be separated. These could be attached back here. There are a number of different options we could use to scatter houses about the site. This is that same site plan with contours and trees. So it indicates that you have the protected tree area. Back in the back, all the trees can be saved. That area can be designated as protected. In the front, you have the 2 trees up here that we could protect also. And then the trees here, they show that we're coming down. So really what we're trying to do with this type of a development is to address the street with some of these houses. Have other houses back here that begin to address each other inside. So maybe the porches and things would address the different houses back here, and you'd have more common spaces back here that people would share. These spaces, the spaces back here, and the spaces in between over here.
So would there be lots associated with this configuration? Would lot lines be between the houses or?
Yeah, they would be platted with as a condominium plat.
Okay,
So yeah, there would be a division, and there would be definitive lots and then other common spaces.
And I'll just say, sometimes there's a confusion when you hear the words condominium plat. The reason why it's called a condominium plat is that they first establish a plat that creates the streets and the right of way and the common area. Then they go in and they build the structures, and then you go and survey what area is the area that they own when they purchase it. And then what area then remains as common ground that the whole group has some sort of indentures that helps them preserve, whether it says how it's preserved, how it's maintained, how they deal with snow, all of those different things, how they address common areas together. So it isn't necessarily, again, it allows you to sell lots. Sometimes when it is in a condominium with structures where they're on top of each other, it's creating the plat that understands what you own of your structure or what you own of a piece of land. So both the 2 examples, Hawken Condos, it is also a condominium plat. And so was the other PEU. They did a condo plat, so they can do porches off the back of their property. They have a certain amount of land that is theirs, and the rest is owned by the whole group within all of Webster Oaks Place.
So with this plan too, with attached housing, I've got an image later that shows everything kind of pulled apart, and they're all single family homes throughout the lot. So you could take, for instance, this house and push it back to your rear property line back here and create some more space in between these 2 houses. You take the same thing with this one, you could spin it around, put it into this space over here, and then these 2 would be separated with space in between. This one could be turned similar to this one and do the same thing. So there are a number of options that we have that we're kind of exploring, both attached and single family cluster housing. These are considerations and determinations that Mara went through before, that the Plan Commission and the City Council determine whether the requested uses will not substantially increase traffic hazards or congestion, will not substantially increase fire hazards, adversely affect the character of the neighborhood, adversely affect the general welfare of the community, or overtax public utilities. What we're trying to do is number one, we're trying to, traffic will minimally increase. We're going from 4 units that we can do, which are larger houses, might have more people in them, to smaller houses, which would have less people in them. So fire hazards would not be increased. We have drives and things that go into the spaces. The dwellings would be of similar scale and character to those in the neighborhood. So we're looking at, ideas from the scale of the houses in the neighborhood, the materiality and things of that nature that we can play off of. The general welfare we think would be positively affected because we're creating more sort of a new neighborhood or new families for new families with houses about the same sizes of those in the neighborhood. Public utilities, we don't think will be overtaxed as the increase in the dwelling is really, again, from 4 to 6. The city council may approve the request upon review of the proposed plan environment unit, finds that the proposal will accomplish 2 or more of the following objectives. Number 1 is the retention of and avoidance of damage of substantial number of trees by imaginative land planning and building design. We're doing cluster housing because we see these trees and we see the land, and the land has different contours and different shapes and different trees that are around it. We're trying to preserve all that. We minimize grading with land planning, again, with the cluster housing. We put the cluster housing in different spaces to pay attention to the grading. Retention of the amount of open space. Again, we're taking these houses and pulling them apart to create inner spaces within to create some public spaces. Development of exterior building design intended to be compatible and harmonious. Again, that's what we're looking for examples of buildings on the street. We're looking for materials, we're looking for scale, and we're looking for input from people in the neighborhood too. So these are just some cluster housing images we pulled down that show our ideas and what we're thinking. These aren't our sketches, they're things that we'd found as we were looking for cluster housing. So this is a house that obviously is back on, looks like a cul-de-sac. It has all your exterior drives on the outside, and then all your public space and public circulation and footpaths on the inside. This type of configuration does the same thing. The houses around the outside, public space on the inside, as does this one. All the parking is along here. You have footpaths to get to the different units on inside on this. And then there's street parking up on there. This is another image. Same thing, kind of an inner area. These are photographs of some cluster housing images. You have the inner center inside there, sidewalks, plantings, porches that address kind of the interior space. And same thing with this image. And the same with that. This was the last page of the proposal that I put in there, and there's a couple other images that I put in to kind of show how the developments relate to the houses in the neighborhood. So these are all the single family homes that come along on this side, on the north side. And again, these are anywhere from, I think, 900 to 1,600 square feet-ish. Most of them are 1 stories, and then there's a couple of 2 stories when you get closer to the lots. Same condition exists on the south side of the street. These houses along this side, these are all the backs of these houses that face this edge of our site. And there are 2 houses up here on the portion of Bell that does come through, or Bell may stop there, and this may just be a drive for those people. But this is the single family home to the maximum size we can do. This is the one that's like 4,500 square feet, and all of these would be 2 stories with 2-car garages. The other image was the cluster housing that we showed with the attached housing. Again, so the front of these houses begin to mimic the scale of some of these houses. This one begins to mimic the scale of those, and the width of this one begins to speak to this house over here. And then all of this area back here is the area that we're preserving. That's all the wooded area where all the trees are. And then this last image is just starting to pull these houses apart. So you'd have 1 house, 2 house, 3 house, then the other houses kind of spread out back here around this protected area with the trees. So this offers you public space in between all these houses, space between these houses, a kind of a public area back here. And then there would be a drive coming along the outside, a drive to these 2 houses, and a drive on the outside of this. That way, most of this portions inside here could be pedestrian traffic that could come off the street to the houses and back through here to the houses back. And this is just a quick sketch. I was traveling last week and I was on the airplane and I just sketched something out real quick to kind of look at, I guess, more of what this is with the houses pulled apart. So these are two houses. These three houses address the street. The darker brown portions are roofs. So you have a house, garage in the back, house, garage in the back. You have a house back here, another one back here. This one probably needs to pull up. It's in a protected area, but I was on an airplane, so. And then this is the other one in the back. So your protected area probably comes back down, kind of back through here. The yellow parts represent porches. You would have front porches on these houses, would all have front porches to address the street, side porches and back porches to address some of the public areas back in here. And then there are notes that I've already kind of been through. Materials vary in scale, color palettes, material palettes, things of that nature. These are looking at the need for cars that can park in garages and also have space in back of these garages before they get to the drive. So each space would have two covered and a couple area for cars in back of the garages. So to essentially try to get four cars for each house.
What was that?
So we're trying to allow, two spaces for a two-car garage and then space before you get to the drive. So you're not just pulling into the drive.
Okay.
You have an area for visitors to park or someone else in the family to park.
Okay.
It's not represented on these site plans, but that's what we're going to strive to get. Some of the other notes talk about internal walks from the streets. So that shows sidewalks going to the houses, sidewalks going into the back to come back to these houses back here. So really what we're trying to create is a lot of public space back here for the people that live in these houses. So they have their own yards and they have communal space back in the back. And that's what we're thinking. So it's a design and process. It's a number of thoughts and process. And, as designers, we welcome feedback from Planning Commission, from people in the neighborhood, from the community. We're looking to kind of design it as a charrette and get a lot of input from people.
In the maximum single-family home diagram that you showed, what was the percentage of lot coverage shown there? I didn't see it written.
On the maximum, it
Yeah.
was, three of them were 32%, one of them was 30%.
Okay, so,
But that was the floor area ratio, which is not the
I'm
same
sorry,
as
yeah,
the
the
lot
floor area
coverage.
ratio.
yeah, I'm looking for, because the lot coverage was just in that particular deliverable, not included.
Yeah, I did not have the lot coverage in there. I had floor area ratio in it.
Is lot coverage defined? Is there a limit on it by the city? Is it 60?
It's 40%,
40%,
but it's
okay.
only for structures. And we've been discussing, last year, we were discussing that it actually is too large of a number and that we need to bring that number down. So that was a code amendment we were going to be working on in the next year or so.
And what's the proposed new?
We don't have
Okay,
a
we don't
proposed
have-
number yet. Yeah,
Okay.
we just know that typically we never come close to the 40% because if you think about it, if you're at a 0.32 with a two-story house, you're way lower when you only have the footprint of 50% of that.
Right, okay, thanks.
Which one of these are you guys leaning toward?
We're leading toward, I think, this type of an image here with single family homes that are separated.
I like
Remember-
this.
Give us two different ones. Which one, like the one on page 12? With the-
No, probably more like the sketch in the end, I think is more what we're looking for.
Not the ones that are attached.
Yeah, the ones that attach were sort of the beginning and we're showing, kind of what we do if we attached houses. But I think as we went through this process, in the beginning, we had row houses and we abandoned those pretty quickly. And then we went to some attached housings and now we're starting to pull them apart so you can create some more public spaces in the back for families.
Will this be like an HOA, like homeowners association? Do you know? have
I don't
those?
know.
So it would have to have some sort of indentures. Doesn't mean that
Okay.
it's a homeowners association, but there will be indentures of some sort that will have to determine that all the people who own the common land ground,
Right. does
how
that
they
work?
would maintain it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that's something that's like figured out amongst those like.
Yeah, it's not
people.
something you get involved in.
Okay.
That was one of my concerns, dealing with homeowners associations. often professionally, even in nice newer neighborhoods and upscale parts of town, could say this is politically correct. Places like Wildwood, Chesterfield, Baldwin, trying to find a homeowner to answer to the name of homeowners association can be a challenge, even in a neighborhood that's 20 years old, or what I call a new neighborhood. So here you've only got 5 houses, right? 6 buildings. To be blunt, just to make my point, not to be rude, but how you going to make sure you got a chump to do the stuff he needs to do to take care of all the common area?
I think in many of those areas, it's either it's hired out. I mean, it's paid for, and a service comes in and mows the lawn. A service comes in and
So-
and
There's
does
no
the work.
recourse from the city should the homeowners decide not to maintain, other than what normally would apply to.
It's our standard codes.
Yeah.
This isn't
Yeah.
whether a homeowners association is put in place and whether they do what they need to do. That's not a matter related to the zoning in that format. They would follow any other resident. If they don't mow their lawn, if they take down trees that are supposed to be protected, all of that comes back to the city.
The city comes after me as a single family owner.
Correct.
I'm done, right? City comes after homeowners association. And again, seeing this in homeowners associations all over the city. If a bigger neighborhoods where there's some mass there, I guess I'm concerned without the mass that you're going to get the finger pointing from house to house, and it becomes difficult to grab a person to do this. Or, and you say they hire it out, so okay, I buy a
So,
house in
Michael-
there and I got the privilege of having to pay a homeowners association fee every month. to
Yeah,
make
you have
sure
the
that-
privilege of not cutting the grass or cleaning the snow from your driveway too. You have services to come in and do that.
So, Michael, I just want to be clear. This is not a matter for zoning. That isn't a matter for zoning. That's not our focus for tonight. Whether the homeowners association and the group that is not a matter for us.
Okay, would that not fit under 4, adversely affect the general welfare of the community? I thought it would. That's why I asked. I
But
thought that was specific
That's
to
the same
ordinance.
that's the same as any other single family homeowner who does not take care of their land. So it's not, saying that it's going to be different or assuming that it's going to be different because it's a group versus a single person. We can't make that assumption. We can't.
Okay, if that's the answer, that's fine. I wanted to ask a question. So we'll treat that. The other question I had is, I think somebody at a house that like 2,500 square foot, you could have 4 or 5 cars easy enough. I've got 5 in my place. I'm seeing the 2 spots there and the one on you said one more if I heard right. Well, I'm driving through there. Is there parking on Euclid? I wasn't clear.
There's parking on
Driving
Wicked, yeah.
through there.
There's probably 6 or 7 spaces in front of the property.
There'll be 6 or 7 spaces in front of the proper on Euclid.
Yeah, it appears to be, sure.
That they can park on Euclid.
It's a public street and they can park on Euclid. And then just as a reminder, all of Webster Groves.
I
There is
didn't
only-
see anything parked there when I
So-
drove by. That's why I was curious.
Yeah,
but they
it is
can
a
park
public
there.
street. And just as a reminder, the code only requires each single family home to have 1 parking space behind the front line of the house. So unless it is a multifamily structure, and at that point, we only require 1.5 parking spaces.
But and again, I was trying to speak specifically to 1 and 2 on the list here.
I understand. And again, it comes down to if they were not able to meet the 1 parking space per unit, or even potentially if you thought it needed the 1.5 parking spaces per unit, then that's where it comes into play. You do have to kind of remember how those numbers work. So if they were coming in, we've had people come in before and ask for less than like 0.75 parking spaces per unit. That is where we usually focus on that they're going to cause traffic hazards and congestion. If you feel that this number of units, 4 units versus 6 units, is going to cause traffic hazards and congestion, that's where the question comes. They are all going to be providing at least a 2-car garage, which many houses in Webster Groves don't even have a 2-car garage.
Mhm.
They are proposing to put additional off-street parking spaces in addition to the fact that they can have, instead of having 5 curb cuts, there's only going to be potentially 3 curb cuts, which could allow more on-street spaces with less cuts if they're planned carefully, because not always are curb cuts planned carefully, and it leaves odd spaces that don't allow a parking space.
So, and I guess mainly I was getting to the back on these private drives. Are you worried about the access for the fire? If somebody starts parking in those private drives, are they going to be wide enough for a park and a truck?
So the fire department will be reviewing the plans on what they would need and where they would need potentially a fire lane and what they would potentially need if this is what is moving forward.
Okay, then my last question. Thank you for your patience. When you say condo plat, that's really just kind of a term. They could still be private residences and have a condo plat.
Yeah, a condo plat can be for single family homes. A condo plat can be for multiple tenants and owning spaces in a single building. It's just the terminology of a condo plat. Typically, when we do a plat for homes, we do the plat based on the land and we don't wait until the house has been built. When you do a condo plat, you have to wait until the structures are built so that you can get the exact configuration of what they own. That includes their home and then whatever additional space is being looked at. So typically they wait until the condominium building is completely built and then they give you a legal description of what you are purchasing. Same sort of thing happens when you have some common ground and you're not platting the lots ahead of time. You're waiting until the structures are done so that you can verify that the structure is within your area that is going to be sold.
Thank you.
I just have one question. I think everything sufficiently answered all of the zoning requirements, but
Hey, Grace, we can't hear you. If you can speak in the mic.
is that better?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Regarding the character of the community, is that a factor in you leaning more towards the single family homes versus the attached homes? I know this is very much a front yard community. I walk through there often and I see a lot of people in their front yards, and they're all single family homes in that area for the most part. So I'm just curious, what's driving you towards that preference as we looked at these different plans tonight?
Yeah, that's what drove us to this last image, I think, was more of smaller homes. And I think these can go up to 2,500 square feet, but they probably won't. They'll probably be more around 2,000, 2,200 square feet. So they're relative in scale to things in the neighborhood. And we're trying to put houses in the front with porches to address the front streetscape. And then we're trying to have the houses in the back that still have porches that kind of have more of an interior space. But, people can still come back into it and visit the houses that are in the back. But yeah, that's exactly what we were looking for. I mean, we started out with row houses, which I think you saw, and we kind of quickly abandoned that. We knew the implications of what it was going to do. Then we went to the grouped housing, and then we started to pull them apart. And I think we're getting closer to where we want to be with this type of an image and this type of a configuration.
Mara, will they be allowed to have fences?
So-
In this kind of a community?
We would want to establish a set of regulations on where they could have them and what could be done.
Okay.
Or establish that they can't have them. I mean, like, depending on what you want to do. So I'm going to jump for a second. Do you have other questions for the applicant? Because we can jump back to helping or give you a reminder of what you are going to be thinking about in terms of what you would put in the ordinance.
Cool.
Do we have any other questions for the applicant?
Yeah, Mara, I was going to ask real quickly about the condition of the buffers as it stands today, mainly on the west and east. So, what's the current condition? Is it no fencing? Are there, is there landscaping in place? I know the northern part pretty wooded, but what's the current condition of the buffers today?
Is that from you? Oh, currently there's nothing there. I don't even think there's a fence on the west side. The east side, I think, may have some fences from the people whose backyards abut the east of the property. But in this sketch, it's noted on both sides, plantings with a question mark. I think there's some sort of planting, could be some sort of buffers down at the ends where, car lights would shine on to other people's lots and things like that. So we are starting to look at some ways of providing plantings and buffers around the property.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mara's gonna. Yeah. Mara, you were going to make some additional comments?
I was going to just make a couple of additional comments because I think these are things that will help you determine if there's additional information you want from either the applicant or staff, which would be critical for making some determinations as we continue to move forward. So when you look at this ordinance, the ordinance includes a series of regulations. These are regulations above and beyond the zoning code. So if you want something that is more restrictive than the zoning code or something more specific, that is what gets put into this overlay. So for example, we would put in the number of units, the maximum number that they could have on the property. We would put in a series of setbacks. Now the code requires a very specific set of standard setbacks to the both the sides and the rear, and then creates a calculation towards the front. Those have already been taken into consideration to match the PEU code. But if there's additional setbacks that you want to put in place, whether it's a specific setback for accessory structures within this area, like if someone wants to have a garden shed or something else like that, thinking through what those setbacks would be in the overall development. We would put in platting requirements that they would have to consolidate all the lots initially to do the development and then do a condominium plat so that they could establish who owns what pieces of the land and what area is common and where the easements are and where access is. We would also put in a maximum floor area ratio because if they aren't going to follow just the standard floor area ratio, because they have lots that are different based on what the condo plat has, you would not be using the standard floor area ratio number. So we would want to create a floor area ratio maximum. We would want to create a site coverage maximum and something related to open space. You would want to put in a height regulation. Can they only go to 2 stories? Can they go to 2.5 stories? Can it get a half story on top of it? You would want to put in any regulations that you would want to put in for parking. So if there are a couple more units and you feel that you need to have more off-site parking spaces and want to make sure that those are included in the development, you could put that into the regulations. And then where the protection of trees are, what area is protected, which trees are protected, whether there's additional buffers, whether there's fencing requirements, all of those things are things that can be considered and put into an ordinance that would define what they could do on the property. And then as a reminder, all of these houses would have to go through the Architectural Review Board. In addition, they would need to come back in before you with a development plan. So they're going to have to come back before you without a public hearing to show that they've met all the regulations that you've provided. So we don't make them keep coming back with finalizing up what this preliminary plan is. They're giving you a preliminary plan so that you can create what you think need to be the regulations. And then once those regulations are in place, they would come back with a development plan that matches those regulations. And then they would be able to go through to Architecture Review Board for the individual homes.
You had, as far as that goes, last month, you had something about it's got to be PEU, it's got to do 2 or so many things to be a PEU qualify. And I saw in his application, he's got something. Is that the same?
No, those are different things. So the items of what it needs to be for a PEU is how you consider whether you feel that a PEU is warranted for this particular piece of property. That's your consideration for approval. That is different from your regulations. Your regulations are what you're going to put in place that if you believe that they do warrant the ability to put this overlay on top of the zoning for a PEU,
So these are different.
those are different. Those are your considerations of, yes, you do want to approve a PEU. And then on top of that, you're going to create a set of regulations that they have to follow in order to, that you would agree that that PEU will make sense.
Does Webster Oaks Place have any special ordinance?
It does. It has a site-specific ordinance. Because it was the very first PEU, so they made the PEU zoning code at the same time, essentially, as they created their first PEU. So they were approved within months of each other. So that first PEU has very few things in it. I can put it in the next packet so that you can see it. There was also a PEU approved that was never built in 2000. That one also didn't have a lot of information in it, a lot less than we would include today, because there's a lot more things that we want to make sure we consider.
So as far as them 5 tests or 4 tests, whatever, I guess I'm looking what you want to include in the ordinance. We'd want to make sure it meets those tests.
Before you would approve the regulations, you would first go through your factors as a commission, that if you believe that it meets those factors, then you would vote that yes, you would approve a PEU. And then once you would approve that PEU, you would approve that PEU with a special set of regulations.
Right. And that you've got your draft regulations.
That was a very, very early, just to make you understand what would be something similar. I would want to rewrite that. That was done with the first, just a very, very preliminary. We would draft a whole new one for next month for you to start with your considerations based on any additional comments that come from you, from the applicant, and from the public.
All right. I'm going to take half a step back here real quick, so I understand a little better. Items for consideration, setbacks there.
Mhm.
Setbacks is in relation to the limits of the PEU in total, or is it each subunit? Because we've got 0 setbacks if we're putting houses right against each other.
No, so you create a set of setbacks from the exterior
Ex-
of the property.
Okay. Of
So,
the whole,
The whole PEU.
okay.
Yeah, you get a set of setbacks from the whole PEU.
Yep.
Then you can put in there, if you are going to approve 0 setback line between structures. And then you can put in additional setbacks if you want particular setbacks between groupings of structures. You can put in a whole series of setbacks if you want to be that restrictive. But at the minimum, you have to have a series of setbacks from neighboring properties.
Okay. And then, so we're going to look for additional comments tonight. We'll hear from the public. We can discuss amongst ourselves. And then we just plan to keep it open entirely.
Plan to keep it open
We're
entirely.
not going to vote on the PEU
No.
itself at this point.
No, not
Okay.
this month. No, not this month.
All right.
So we want to get additional comments. And then once we get public comment from both online and in person, if there are, whoever wants to speak, I will talk through the process of what we would do next month, based on how I showed you how we were going to go through things initially.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for staff at this point? All right. Open it up for public comment. First, folks here in person, do we fill out speaker card?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, please come on up and state your name and address.
Hi, my name is Connie Evans. My husband and I live at 512 Plateau, which is right around the corner from the planned unit. So first, I want to thank the Onder organization. They did something really nice. I'm a member of the North Webster Neighborhood Coalition, and we had asked for them to preserve the ornaments, the architectural ornaments on the top of the old store, which was 133 Euclid. And they did that for us. So we're hoping to incorporate those into either the memorials at Barbary Park or perhaps at the Historical Society, because we think any Historical memory for the neighborhood is very important to preserve. Okay, and the neighbors have been getting together and discussing this, and everybody is really looking forward to it. We have a few concerns. We're concerned about rainwater runoff that would go off the back of the property onto Bell Avenue. The plan that showed the
Contours.
yeah, the contour plan
Yeah.
showed that that did go downhill. And some of the people back there are kind of concerned about it. They would also like a consideration of some sort of privacy barrier, either extra greenery or fencing or something. The other thing people are concerned about is the off-street parking. Even though there is parking allowed on Euclid, it tends to be a pretty busy street because it's goes from Elm to Rock Hill. And there are a lot of kids walking back and forth. A lot of people walk on that street. We don't have a continuous sidewalk on either side of Euclid. So if the city could do something about that, that would be awesome. And let's see, was there anything else you guys can think of from the meeting? Emerson, are you online?
So you have 3 minutes, and then Emerson did also email me a whole list
Okay.
that I'm going to share with the Plan Commission.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else here in person? Okay, online?
No one's raised their, oh, wait, there's one. Mr. Pryor?
Yes, Joel Pryor, 220 Lithia. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Fantastic. Hey, thank you. I just would specifically like to request, I think as I was looking at the initial plans that were presented last week, there were some significant concerns over the townhouse styles and the different styles that they had. I do appreciate him continuing to grow, and I look forward to see the next group of plans. Specifically, based on my understandings from what Mara's presented, I'd like to request that the commission have setbacks put into the PEU, because my assumption is it will move forward that direction, that would allow for single family homes to be built. I think that is the part of the neighborhood that would allow the most continuity. I do appreciate that they're trying to keep homes of similar size there versus building mega mansions in the community. And I think that that specific requirement would limit their ability and build something that would be characteristic of the rest of the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Vaughn, if you want to unmute.
Yes, real quickly. Great presentation, by the way. Love the last outlay that you guys are thinking about. I thought it was awesome. I was kind of concerned. I'm one of the residents that live at 556 Bell Avenue, and like the young lady addressed earlier about the waters running off downhill. That was one of our biggest concerns. And my neighbors are my family, my brother-in-law, my sister-in-law, and they're right up against the butt of the bill on the back end. We just want it to be beautified with something nice for us to look at from the back end. So I think I heard in your presentation that there might be landscapes and things of that nature to kind of beautify that. So we have something to look at other than just, the back end of a development. But thank you. That's all I had to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't see any other hands at this time.
Okay, and were there some comments submitted that you wanted to share now?
So I received comments via email right before the meeting. So what I'm going to do is provide them in the next packet, but it included looking at a couple different things. And actually, just because I have the ability to grab it really quick. So the concerns were about water retention and runoff. So just as a reminder, we do follow MSD guidelines and regulations. So a full stormwater plan will be required. It will also include a management plan during construction of how they're going to protect from runoff during the construction portion. There was a question about regulation of replacing the trees. There will be a tree preservation plan. So trees that are unable to be preserved will have a certain calculation requirement of new trees that have to be planted, which could count towards some of the buffering requirements. It asks about how soon after the decision will construction start. We would still need to look at that and some of the timing of that, but there would be a series of steps that would be needed after it would go to council should it get approved and move forward. Ask about what type of buffer there will be between the homes, the new and the existing. That is something that can be put into the code, into the regulations. There is also some buffering regulations that are in the tree ordinance that typically are from more commercial to residential, but could be something to model after if you wanted to put some additional buffering requirements in. It asks about residents being notified in advance of interruptions of utility service. There typically shouldn't be interruptions of utility service during construction like this. But if there was some disruption, the utility companies would get in touch with them. It asks about rainscaping to be a consideration. We do always encourage stormwater plans to integrate things like rain gardens and other things like that, but we can't require it necessarily, but we would want to potentially encourage it in the code. There's a question about how the construction impact on the value of homes. We don't typically look at what the numbers are. Like your consideration is based on zoning and not based on financial and economic matters. So we're going to focus on that. Sufficient off-street parking. So again, you can put additional requirements for off-street parking above and beyond what would be the standard, because that's something that you can put into the ordinance. It asks, will the ARB review the plans? That would be a requirement of any new structure. It asks about the price ranges of new homes. Again, that's not a consideration of the Plan Commission. I'm sure the applicant might be able to share that. And then there is the question about the continuous sidewalks throughout the block of Euclid. That would be a larger city matter in regards to, they do have programs that they work on for certain areas on walks to schools, and usually fundraising for that. The reminder always is that sometimes people don't realize that front area is right of way. And when a sidewalk does go in, some neighbors are upset that the sidewalk's going into their front yard. But I can put that onto something with the Public Works Department to see what their next plan of action is for any sidewalks. So that was the list from Emerson. I will make sure that list also gets included in your staff report for next month.
Thank you.
So
What-
for the water runoff seems to be a big issue, so I know we go by MSD standard. Anything else that we can do or ask for?
So just as a reminder, many people don't realize that whenever a new house goes in, there is a stormwater retention plan required.
Right.
And in many cases, that includes also ensuring that there are no points of discharge within 10 feet of property lines. A lot of the older homes are built much closer than the 10 feet. A lot of them have downspouts that come directly out from the home. And so we would want to take that into consideration with the setbacks that we have. The setbacks are going to keep it much, much farther away. So points of discharge will be directed in other areas. But they will have to provide on-site detention and have an engineer report that identifies the amount of stormwater that they will be creating and the amount of stormwater that they have to retain on site, and then how it's going to be discharged and where.
If I can add, just on a development of this side, the MSD review is not necessarily going to comment upon a gutter going to somebody's neighbor. But if you're that neighbor, that might be a big deal to you. And the MSD review will not get into that.
No, the
That's a city.
the city's review. The city's review will get into that.
Just that city's
good to know.
review,
And when you-
the neighborhoods, and I'd also add that saving the trees in a development this size, probably one of the best things you can do to deal with stormwater.
True.
Saving them trees, it's a big deal.
Mara, when you spoke of stormwater detention plans, was that permanent or just during construction?
So we require both. So we have a stormwater plan for during the construction, which includes how they provide silt control and other elements during the construction site. And then there will be a permanent element that addresses whether there is underground detention in certain areas, whether there's on-site, how it's going to address. And the way our code works is it acts like the entire property is grass, and they have to create the calculations based on it. It's not a differential from the houses that were there to the houses being built. It's from a complete grass site essentially, and they have to address everything that is being built on that area. So a lot of
So the
times,
change from pure grass, a natural many years ago to,
yes,
Okay.
yes. Many times people get confused and they're like, well, but the house that was there was already, a footprint of 1,000 square feet. And they think that it's only the differential of like maybe a 1,200 square foot footprint. It's not that. They actually have to come back and act like the whole area is just grass and show how they're going to detain all water for all the new structures.
My other question is private drives, because I really don't know that much about private drives, how that all works.
So we have examples that we give to residents all the time if they have shared driveways, and how they can maintain or have it gets put in and recorded with St. Louis County if there are shared driveway easements. In this case, it would probably be shared driveway easements on the plat versus individual shared driveway easements.
Yeah, I know, but this private drive is also going to be for fire department and ambulance and stuff like that to be able to get in and out.
The fire department typically is perfectly fine with being able to get in and out of private drives as long as they have certain amount of access. But again, I want to wait and show the fire department the current plan. So at this point, they've seen the initial plan and gave us some basic comments. They were able to, based on the distance back and where they can be on the street and where they can get into certain driveways, felt that they could address it. We would want to show them the latest configuration and see if they have any recommendations.
Last one was parking. So if we require more parking, that means we're going to be eating up the green space.
Yes and no, if they're already proposing a 2-car garage. So then the question is whether you just ask for additional, depending on the width of the off-street spaces. You can also think about, sometimes they can use pervious pavers for areas. So Rock Hill from Kirkham North, all the parking spaces on either side are with pervious pavers. So that could be a consideration.
anything else? Would the applicant care to respond at this point to any of the questions that have been raised?
No, I think,
Okay. Yes.
So I was just going to say, this is the plan for the continuation. We're going to ask the Plan Commission if you would continue to the May 2nd meeting. We plan to do a further review of their request as it has, as it has moved forward. We're going to send it out to all the departments again with the current potential configuration. See if there's any other information requests that we can answer, in particular to the questions both that were on via Zoom and in person, as well as that Council Member Smith had provided to us, and put those in there. And the plan would be that we would focus on the rest of that information, allow any further public comments should you need public comments. And then you all will have to make a determination if you feel comfortable about closing the hearing or not. We will leave that open with that consideration. We can always put it on the agenda and you can determine that you're not ready to close it.
Right.
But if you are ready to close it and you do vote at that meeting, that is an option.
And your report will address some of the factors that you put up.
Yes,
the
we will
bulleted points
we will
before.
include in the report the factors that you all need to consider and the factors that you need to vote upon. and then a draft of some regulations based on considerations we've heard.
Okay, so you're not soliciting necessarily comments on those things at this.
I would
You
be
would
happy.
welcome them, but you don't need them.
I would welcome them, but I don't necessarily need them. I think most of the considerations, in some cases, some of the things that are being discussed, it just needs to be clarified that if it's not in the ordinance, like they need to follow everything in our stormwater code. So that chapter needs to be followed. And so making sure that it's very clear that that is what needs to be followed during the development of the site.
But you'll provide a recommendation, for instance, on setbacks.
Yes, I'll give you a recommendation like I usually do for your CUPs.
Okay.
And then from there, you can work off of it if you want to make changes to that or have any other considerations you want to add in, or if there are considerations that you want to remove.
Not making it easy on my first meeting here, so.
What? Am I making it easier or
No,
harder?
no. It's not supposed to be standard for the first meeting. I don't know how I'm trying to deal with this, so. Okay, so do I have a motion to continue?
Motion.
Move that we hold public hearing open, 21 PC 11 Euclid Farms until May 2nd.
Farms.
Elms.
Second. Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Farm.
Aye.
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 Opposed? Do we need a roll call?
No.
All right. Secretary, next.
Agenda item 6.
Item?
Yeah, plats and site plans are none. Agenda item 7, adjournment of regular session.
I don't know what he just said.
So we're at other business,
Oh, sorry about that. Other business.
other business.
8, discuss schedule for plan commission training.
Oh, yeah.
So just as a reminder, we usually try to
Thank
do plan commission training at least once every other year. The last time we did plan commission training was right before everything shut down in 2020. So our plan is that we would like to get some training in soon. We have a couple different options. We can do it before the meeting, which is what we've done before, where we've done it from like 6 to 7 and then held our hearing or regular meeting at 7. We've also had it during a meeting if the meeting has very little items on the agenda, if we don't have very much going on, or we have scheduled a special meeting. So those are 3 options. I just want to throw those out there. The May Plan Commission meeting will have this continued. And then we plan to open up a public hearing on accessory dwelling units. It'll just be the opening of that one. So it'll just be more giving you some basic information, kind of like we do with all of our other text amendments, where we start with just here's some basic information and what the code says. And then it'll take us a few months as we work through those. So May could be a little tight with both of those on the agenda. But we could create a special meeting. We could do it before the meeting. We could wait and do training in June. But I figured I'd throw that out there and ask that question.
We're gonna do the dinner again. That was so good. That was so-
I say we do it before.
We could do it before, and I would say that no, our budget would not allow us to do dinner this year.
Okay.
So yes, you would have to bring your own food.
It was so good.
Right.
Okay.
I was going to save this till the very end, but with the new plan commission members, I was going to suggest perhaps grabbing a drink after next meeting. So if you can wait until then to eat, then there you go.
I'll eat my 4th.
So,
So typically, I think we can do it in an hour. We would kind of go through my standard PowerPoint presentation about like state statute requirements, what our charter says, what your roles are, how we would, what staff does, like what our role is. And then we would usually have our city attorney to go ahead and talk to you a little bit about conflicts of interest, sunshine law, open meetings, and all of those things, just to remind you about, not posting on social media and, directing people to staff if they have questions and things like that. So we could probably just set our date for, next month we could do it at 6 o'clock. If that seems to, and I think I heard Maddie. Maddie, did you say something?
No, I didn't say anything.
Oh, sorry. I thought I heard. something else come in off of Zoom. So the next meeting is Monday, May 2nd.
I think I'd have a problem with that. I don't have my calendar here. I think 6.
6 may be
7.
tight for me,
Okay.
but I might be able to make it.
The other thing we could do is we could do it at our June meeting. Our June meeting is Monday, June 6th.
They're both good for me. So
Will people all be out of town for June? I don't know. I won't, but I don't know.
I won't.
I'm
Okay.
currently free.
Okay. So maybe let's focus on June 6th. And here's the thing, if we don't get any, so today was the deadline for anything new to go on for May. And I did not see anything come in, but I was also gone the last couple hours of the day. I don't believe anything new has come in at this time. So we would know in a couple weeks whether we have anything on for June. And if all we're doing is ADUs at that point, if we have at that point voted potentially, or if you're in the end of the Euclid Elms and voting and then doing a little bit on ADU, we'd be able to fit it in without having to meet too early. And we can always have the meeting start at like 6:30, finish it, and then do the training after. So there's a few options, but if I know that either June or May could possibly work, I can work on getting that scheduled.
Okay.
When I did
Thank you.
zoning adjustment, there was something the Urban League or somebody put on for a training that the city sent me to. Is there things like that?
So I know UMSL does some training for plan commissioners, but there is a fee to it. And at this point, we do not have, funding in our budget to send people. Whenever there is free training, I usually try to send people to it. I will tell you, I have been, one of my webinars that I've put on about plan commission training is on the national website for planning. So I think I can give you enough training for what you would need, and then I could provide you with some other free webinars potentially.
Well, I guess I was getting at, if you do a webinar or something, especially this day and age, it may be asynchronous, right? So we could watch it at our leisure.
I think it's more important for us to all be in the room together, because I think we have found in the past that the questions that different people have, they might not realize that they have, and you're all hearing the answers at the same time, and understanding that we're giving you the same information. So I would prefer us to do a training in person or together, even if a couple people are on Zoom. I'd actually, if there's a way to have you all in the same room, it would be even better.
I would tend to agree.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Any other
What else
business?
is new out in the
Yeah.
city? Anything going on out there?
Today's the wrong day to ask me.
Bagels are still coming.
The Union Bagels is still coming. There's a lot of things that are delayed due to people trying to get larger pieces of equipment and things related to COVID. Bagels, they're hoping to be open this summer. And I'm trying to think of anything else new right now. Sorry, I didn't put a list together. I will provide you guys a list next month when I have more time in my afternoon before the meeting.
When's Elm going to get overlaid?
Oh, yeah, that would be, talk to Missouri American Water.
What about a planner? That'd be
Oh, yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you, Maddie.
okay.
Nice to meet you.
Yes. Awesome. Nice to meet you.
Oh, say that again in the microphone, please.
Oh, yeah, come here.
Come introduce yourself.
Okay, pick a microphone and
Yeah.
microphone. Hi, I'm Barbara Stovall. Week 3 has just begun. And my sympathies to Mara as she is training me. But I am looking forward to working with you all. This is going to be quite the education. And I'm a Webster Groves resident and am pleased to be part of this process. So thank you.
Awesome. Nice to
Welcome.
meet you.
Barbara, are you related to Steve?
Related to Steve.
I am very much related to Steve. Yes. I
Oh,
am
like
married to
like
Steve,
married
so
to him? Okay.
That must be Maddie who asked.
Yeah.
Yes.
We need a motion.
I'm waiting for everybody to be quiet.
You heard from Danny, is he doing okay?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Danny's doing awesome. Danny is doing very well over in Crestwood. We're really, proud of him for moving on to Crestwood. He hasn't had time to talk to us because he's super, super busy. But he did call to let me know that he appreciated how organized we were here because it's not very organized there.
Wow, that's
Good job.
a low bar. All right, tell him to get something done with the old mall property, so. All right. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved and seconded.
Thank you.
Aye. All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you all.
You're not a boss, huh?
Oh, hey, wait, before you sign off, could you also introduce us to our plan commission member?
What?
Good.
Sorry, Maddie, we couldn't hear you. Try
Yeah.
it again.
Oh, I said, we have a new plan commission member too.
Oh, yes. Sorry, Grace didn't get introduced.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, Grace, welcome.
Yeah. Oh, I don't think it's on.
Okay. This is a dead connection.
I can hear you kind of.
Okay, hi. Your picture
Hi.
is gone, so I'm just talking to the room. Grace Clapper, look forward to meeting you, working with you.
All right, nice to meet you, Grace.
Danny, that specifically did that one.
It's just-
That's right.
Maddie, hopefully you all get to meet in person in the next month or two.
Yes. I hope to have a voice then. Okay. Good night.
Have a
everyone.
good night, everyone.
Think about drinks next month.